tech entrepreneur and international speaker. So I really want to invite Carlos for his amazing keynote. So bear with us, then we go for networking. So Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Carlos Mats. I am an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, BBUA, for putting this together. It's beautiful. I'm really honored to be here. Can you give me a minute? I'm waiting for my computer. So, how about let's talk about something? Yeah? All right. Who have heard here about AGI, Artificial General Intelligence? Yeah? Cool. So AGI is the evolution of AI, right? And how do you define AGI? AGI is AGI is basically the point where artificial intelligence comes to the same cognitive ability as a human, right? And that's a huge transformation in terms of society, right? So imagine what a world would look like where we could create we can have inanimate matter that can think better than us. So what are the consequences of this? The implications of this is that basically we're going to be able to have the super smartest human replicated infinitely, which means that we're going to be practically able to compress 500 years of scientific research and innovation in maybe 18 months. What kind of world would that look like? Right? So, off the top of my head. So, anybody has heard about AlphaFold? No? So AlphaFold is the biggest, I would say, in my opinion, the biggest achievement of artificial intelligence, basically. You know AlphaFold? Exactly. So AlphaFold basically is a project by Google that the holy grail of science as a whole is determining how to figure out how proteins fold. Why would we want to know this? Because proteins are basically the little motors that do everything in your body. So they're made out of amino acids, and depending on those amino acids, the string of amino acids, the protein folds on itself, right? And the 3D structure of that fold determines where it's going to be attached to, right? So if it folds this way, it's going to be attached to this receptor. If it's attached to the other way, it's going to be attached to that receptor. So basically, when we want to create new drugs, we basically are looking for ways to attach to receptors for that drug to affect you, right? Basically, we have been doing this as a brute force, right? We have been trying to understand how amino acids basically affect the 3D shape of the protein so that we can develop new types of drugs, new types of treatments, personal treatments, right? That was the holy grail, but there were so many, and the way we were doing it was so prehistoric, to say something, that it was going to take too long. Right now, with artificial intelligence, we have broken the holy grail of science, basically. And it's not bigger news because it happened in 2020. And we were having a lot of problems in 2020, right? So basically, the project is called AlphaFold. AI, by Google, basically discovered how to predict how all proteins in existence are going to fold based on the string of amino acids that it's composed of. So basically, we have the possibility now to think about, okay, we're going to cure all diseases. We're going to have personal treatment for all diseases for humans. So, like, for example, the FDA, they have, all these drugs that have to work and have to be safe, and that's why you have a lot of side effects, because they have to work for everybody, but for a lot of people, the side effects are going to be terrible. AlphaFold might predict that we can have actually personal medicine, like really personal medicine. If I have an ailment that it is 1 in a billion, I'm going to be able to solve it because AI has solved how proteins fold and how proteins shape and how they can create new drugs for me specifically. So in terms of artificial intelligence, I do believe that AlphaFold is the biggest revolution in terms of medicine that we have right now. And it was only enabled by artificial intelligence. However, that is artificial intelligence that is narrow. There's two definitions. Narrow AI, which is artificial intelligence that is, super good at only one thing. For example, AlphaFold is only good to predict how to fold proteins, right? There's other things that are super good at computer vision, detecting, vehicles and everything. So that is narrow AI. But what happens when all those narrow AIs basically start eating up on all of the human knowledge? And all those narrow AIs start compounding on themselves, and basically all of human knowledge is gonna be encompassed by these narrow AIs. What would happen then? That's what we call artificial general intelligence. AGI is gonna be a profound moment in human history, because we're basically gonna have entities that think like humans even better than humans. And that's only AGI. The next step, on AGI is ASI, artificial superintelligence. So basically the predictions of all this is that, okay, we might have AGI by 2040, we might have ASI, or 2060 or whatever, we might have ASI by 2070. All these predictions came clashing down with the introduction of large language models and RLHF with this, which is the fine-tuning of large language models. All those timelines have been compressed down to, we think that we're gonna get to AGI by 2030, instead of 2050, instead of 2060. And by the time we get to AGI, there's a possibility that artificial intelligence is gonna be recursively improving itself, right? It's gonna be like a positive feedback loop. It's gonna learn more and more and more and more. And just so that you have a context, artificial intelligence was basically based on how we think. We are made of neurons and dendrites and impulses. Basically, artificial intelligence is biomimicry. And us as humans, we are the best identifiers of patterns in the world. Like, our brain is the most complex object on the universe that we know of, and everything that it does is just see patterns, identify patterns. But there are two concepts that play against us. Number one is that there are some concepts that are just so complex that we cannot determine the pattern of those concepts. And number two is that we are bounded by our own physical abilities. Like, there are some concepts that even if they were broken down to us, we were not gonna be able to understand, basically, right? So those two concepts with AGI, they're not gonna be an issue. We're gonna be able to actually see patterns that we have never seen before. We're gonna be able to predict things that we never would have been able to predict, and there are some things, there are levels of knowing, right? There's the things that we know, there are things that we know that we don't know. For example, there are a lot of things in science that are a complete mystery, right? So, for example, I might get the percentages wrong, but I think it's like most of the matter of the universe, like 95% is dark matter. The matter that we look in the universe is only 5%. 70% of the energy in the universe is dark energy, which we don't have an explanation for. We don't know what dark matter is, and it's 95% of the universe. We don't know what dark energy is, and it moves the universe. Like, we think that 95% of our DNA, we don't know what it does, right? Why don't we know that? Is it because we are not capable of knowing it by ourselves? Is it because it's too complex for us to understand? We have come to a point that we basically have created a tool that takes away all of those hurdles, and we can actually start thinking about explaining the things we wouldn't have ever thought of explaining now. That is AGI, right? And we're getting to that point in this decade, basically. And what happens when AGI becomes self-improving and recursing? The next step of AGI is artificial superintelligence, which is basically the intelligence explosion. We don't know what's going to happen after that. That's what we call the singularity. The singularity is the point where all our physical and mathematical models just do not work because we tend to infinity. That's why it's called the singularity, because we don't know what's going to happen. However, we know that these things are way too powerful. So what are we going to do about it? So basically, we need a lot of research in alignment, in explainability, in transparency, and in avoiding biases on the data training set, basically. And how do we do that? Do we just let corporations train all the huge large language models? Some of them are like 60 billion parameters. Some of them go to the trillions, I think. What if this, let's say, a company or a country would like to train like a quadrillion, parameter large language model? It would need the capacity of thousands of CPUs. So now you need a lot of power, a lot of data, a lot of compute, and a lot of cash to actually do this. But what if they do it? Like, are they going to become the biggest power on Earth? We need to regulate this, right? So the regulation is, okay, who's going to have access to these systems? How are we going to ensure that these systems work for the benefit of humanity? We have to ensure that the data set that they're trained on is not biased, like you said. So we're getting to a point where we're basically being disrupted, right? Laws are not catching up to the technology. We are thinking that we might have artificial superintelligence by 2030. So all these philosophical questions, all these great questions, basically is what I'm gonna talk about this today. Maybe, are we ready? ¿Estamos listos? Listo, gracias. Gracias.